The aircraft descended smoothly through the desert sky, its polished wings catching the last glow of the setting sun. Below, Dubai shimmered like a mirage brought to life, golden towers rising from sand, highways glowing like rivers of light. For Keanu Reeves, the city looked familiar yet distant, a place where luxury masked secrets and silence carried weight. As the plane touched down at Dubai International Airport, everything unfolded with flawless precision. Private terminals, tinted glass, discreet officials in tailored suits. Keanu stepped onto the marble floor, dressed simply, his calm presence standing in contrast to the opulence surrounding him. To the world, he was here for a confidential film summit, an elite gathering, whispered about only in closed rooms. To him, it felt like just another stop on a long road he thought he had left behind. Cameras were absent, but eyes were everywhere. Gold-accented corridors stretched endlessly, reflecting soft light across polished floors. The air smelled faintly of leather and expensive perfume. Keanu walked steadily, his expression neutral, but something inside him shifted. A sensation he hadn't felt in years. A quiet warning, like an echo from a past life knocking on the present. At immigration, formalities were swift. His passport disappeared briefly behind a glass booth. The officer smiled politely. Too politely. Somewhere beyond the counter, unseen systems scanned more than just his name. They searched histories buried deep, operations erased from public record, moments rewritten by powerful hands. Keanu glanced around. Business tycoons spoke in hushed tones. Celebrities laughed softly behind sunglasses. Security moved like shadows, blending seamlessly into the architecture. Everything appeared perfect, and that was what unsettled him most. A subtle pause followed. The passport did not return immediately. Behind reinforced walls, a silent alert flickered to life. No alarms, no flashing lights, just a red signal pulsing once before vanishing. It was enough somewhere far beyond Dubai. Files reopened. Long dormant agreements activated. Lines of authority crossed borders in seconds. Keanu received his passport back with a nod and a courteous, "Welcome to Dubai," thanked the officer and continued forward, unaware that the welcome was already a farewells. He entered the private terminal lounge. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the glowing city skyline. Desert night had fallen, wrapping Dubai in velvet darkness studded with gold. Keanu paused for a moment, taking it in. He felt the weight of memory pressing against his chest. Faces he hadn't seen in decades. Missions that officially never existed. Promises made in silence. This city built on ambition and illusion was the perfect place for truth to disappear. Behind him, unseen, doors locked softly. Communication channels closed. And the golden arrival, meant to mark a new chapter, quietly became the first step into a 5-year shadow that would change everything. Keanu Reeves had taken only a few steps into the private terminal lounge when the atmosphere subtly changed. It wasn't visible. No alarms rang, no guards rushed forward. Yet the air itself felt tighter, as if the building had drawn a slow, deliberate breath and was now holding it. Behind layers of encrypted firewalls and biometric locks, a silent signal traveled faster than sound. It moved through government satellites, intelligence databases, and sealed diplomatic channels, recognized only by those trained to never react. A dormant file, buried for more than a decade, had been triggered by his presence on Dubai soil. On a secure screen deep inside airport security operations, Keanu's name appeared, not in bold, not flashing but marked with a discreet crimson symbol known only to a handful of agencies worldwide. The symbol meant one thing: contain, do not alert. A female analyst studied the data in silence. Her fingers hovered above the keyboard as classified footage replayed, grainy night vision clips, redacted mission logs, timestamps from Hong Kong ports that officially never saw him. Someone had rewritten the story, and now the system demanded a conclusion. Within seconds, the signal leapt borders. In Hong Kong, a sealed courtroom's digital archive unlocked itself, preloaded with charges yet to be spoken aloud. In Interpol's Shadow Division, a retired officer received a single-word notification on an unregistered device. Active. He closed his eyes, knowing the ghost had returned. Meanwhile, Keanu stood by a glass wall overlooking the runway, unaware that every step he took was being recalculated. His reflection stared back at him, calm, composed, almost detached. But beneath that stillness, his instincts stirred. Years ago, he had learned to trust silence more than noise. And this silence was screaming. Two men entered the lounge, dressed not as security, but as diplomats. Their movements were precise, synchronized, rehearsed countless times in training rooms far from public view. They did not look at Keanu immediately. Instead, they waited, allowing the system to finish its work. A final confirmation arrived. Jurisdiction approved. Transfer authorized. Subject unaware. The silent signal faded as quickly as it had appeared, leaving behind no trace, except the chain it had locked around one man's future Keanu. Picked up a glass of water from a nearby table, his hand steady. As he drank, a flicker of memory crossed his minda. Dock in Hong Kong under heavy, rain-coated names exchanged. A promise made to protect something larger than himself. He had walked away from that life, believing the debt was paid. He was wrong. The lounge doors closed softly behind him. Conversations nearby grew, quicker, as if people instinctively sensed they were no longer part of the same moment even. The city lights outside seemed distant now, blurred by invisible walls closing in. One of the men finally stepped forward. "Mr. Reeves," he said calmly, with a polite smile that never reached his eyes. The corridor beyond the lounge was bathed in soft neon light, a polished artery connecting luxury to authority. Glass walls reflected endless versions of the same moment. Keanu Reeves walking calmly, between two men who had not yet said the words that would change his life. Their footsteps were measured, unhurried, as if time itself had been instructed to slow down. Outside, Dubai glowed. Skyscrapers pierced the night sky, wrapped in flowing gold and electric blue, symbols of power and ambition. Inside the terminal, everything was quiet, too quiet. No tourists, no cameras, no witnesses who would remember. They stopped near a private security checkpoint hidden from public access. One of the men stepped aside and the illusion dissolved. From the shadows emerged elite Dubai security officers, dressed in dark tactical uniforms without visible insignia. Their presence was overwhelming, not because of force, but because of certainty. These were professionals who had already completed the mission in their minds. "Mr. Reeves," the lead officer said, his voice calm and controlled, "you are being detained under an international directive." The word detained hung in the air, carefully chosen. Not arrested yet. Not accused yet. Just enough to make resistance meaningless. Keanu looked at the officer's face, searching for something human. He found none. Years ago, he had worn a similar expression himself. He nodded once, slowly, signaling cooperation. There was no point in asking questions whose answers were classified. A pair of restraints appeared, not aggressive, not visible enough to draw attention. They closed around his wrists, with a soft metallic click that sounded louder than it should have. In that sound, a chapter ended. As they guided him forward, neon reflections danced across the glass walls, painting his silhouette in fractured colors. Anyone watching from afar might have mistaken the scene for a film. Shoot, a star escorted by security, through a restricted zone. That was the beauty of it. Truth hidden in plain sight. Keanu's thoughts remained steady. He cataloged details the way he once had on operations: number of officers, exits, camera placement, flight distance to Hong Kong. Yes, Hong Kong. He felt it now. This wasn't Dubai's case. Dubai was only the gate. They entered a secure holding area where the city noise vanished entirely. The door sealed behind them with a deep mechanical hum. One officer removed Keanu's watch and phone, placing them carefully into a sealed evidence pouch, as if respecting the man even while dismantling his freedom. "You will be transferred shortly," the lead officer said. "Further information will be provided upon arrival." Keanu finally spoke. His voice was calm, almost gentle. "Arrival where?" The officer paused, a fraction of a second too long. "Hong Kong." The name landed like a controlled explosion. Memories surged, rain-soaked docks, coded messages. The room was designed to erase time. No windows, no clocks. Just smooth gray walls and a single metal table bolted to the floor. The light above flickered faintly, never fully dimming, never fully bright. It was a space built for compliance, for confessions that would never be recorded, and truths that would never reach the outside world. Keanu Reeves sat alone at first, his hands free now, resting calmly on the cold surface of the table. He studied the room with quiet awareness. This was not Dubai's justice. This was something older, international, invisible, and far more dangerous. The door opened without warning. Two figures entered. One wore a tailored suit, immaculate and unmarked by authority. The other remained in uniform, his presence silent and absolute. The man in the suit placed a thin black folder on the table and slid it forward. "No recording devices," he said softly. "No legal counsel. What we discuss here does not officially exist." Keanu didn't respond. He opened the folder. Inside were photographs he hadn't seen in years. Satellite images of a Hong Kong shipping port, a rain-drenched warehouse, faces blurred except for one unmistakable silhouette that looked painfully familiar. Dates followed. Codes. Names replaced by numbers. Entire paragraphs redacted in thick black ink. "You're being charged," the man continued, "with involvement in an unsanctioned operation linked to Hong Kong intelligence assets. The operation resulted in economic disruption, classified data exposure, and the disappearance of several protected individuals." Keanu looked up slowly. His eyes were steady. "That operation was authorized," he said. "Just not on paper." The man smiled faintly. "That's the problem." He explained it then, the way powerful institutions always did. The operation had succeeded too well. It exposed alliances that were never meant to be seen. Someone had to carry the blame. Someone who could be erased without collapsing the system. Keanu Reeves was perfect. An internationally loved figure. A public image strong enough to survive disbelief. A past clean enough to hide what needed to stay buried. "You were supposed to disappear quietly," the man said. "Retire, live peacefully. But files don't stay dead forever." Keanu closed the folder. He understood now. This was not about guilt. This was about control. "Why now?" he asked. "Because Hong Kong wants closure," the man replied. "And because you're no longer protected." The uniformed officer stepped forward. "You will be transferred under sealed jurisdiction. Trial will be conducted behind closed doors. Verdict predetermined." Keanu leaned back slightly, absorbing the weight of the words. 5 years. He already felt it coming. Not as fear, but as inevitability. "You could make this easier," the man in the suit added. "Sign a statement. Confirm the official narrative." Keanu met his gaze. "Then the truth dies with me." The smile vanished. The folder was collected. Midnight wrapped the runway in darkness, broken only by the sharp white lines of landing lights and the slow pulse of amber beacons. The air was thick with heat and jet fuel, carrying the low, constant roar of engines preparing for departure. Far from the public terminals, beyond glass and luxury, a blacked-out aircraft waited like a silent predator. Keanu Reeves was escorted across the tarmac by 4 armed officers. Their footsteps echoed against concrete, measured and precise. No insignia marked their uniforms. No country claimed them. This transfer belonged to no single nation. It belonged to agreement. The city of Dubai glittered in the distance, a horizon of gold and ambition. From here it looked unreal, like a dream already fading. Keanu kept his eyes forward. He had learned long ago that looking back served no purpose, when doors were already closing. At the base of the aircraft stairs, a final biometric scan confirmed his identity. The system did not say his name. It displayed a code, asset confirmed. Inside, the aircraft was stripped of comfort. No logos, no windows near the seating area. Just muted gray panels, reinforced doors, and a single row of secured seats. Keanu was guided to one of them, his wrists restrained again, not tightly, but deliberately. Every movement was calculated to remind him that control had changed hands. As the engines powered up, the door sealed with a heavy thud that vibrated through the cabin. The sound felt permanent. An officer across from him finally spoke. "Flight time is approximately 9 hours. Keanu gave a small nod. 9 hours to cross continents. 9 hours to reflect on choices made in another life. The aircraft began to move. Slowly at first, then faster, until the force pressed him back into the seat. Through a narrow window near the cockpit, he caught a final glimpse of the runway lights blurring into streaks. Dubai vanished beneath the wings, swallowed by darkness. Somewhere over open airspace, turbulence shook the cabin. Keanu closed his eyes. Memories surfaced uninvited. Hong Kong rain hammering down on steel docks, coded voices in his earpiece. The moment he had chosen to act instead of obey. He remembered. believing that doing the right thing would eventually balance the scales. He had underestimated how long power could hold a grudge. Halfway through the flight, a tablet was placed on the fold-out tray before him. The screen displayed a single message. Jurisdiction, Hong Kong. Status, in transit. Outcome, pending. No appeals. No alternatives. The officer retrieved the tablet without a word. Silence reclaimed the cabin, broken only by the hum of the engines, a constant reminder that time was moving forward, whether he was ready or not. As dawn approached, the aircraft began its descent. Through the small window, neon lights appeared, scattered like stars fallen to earth. Hong Kong emerged from the darkness, dense, alive. Morning rain fell over Hong Kong in fine, relentless sheets, blurring the skyline into streaks of gray and neon. The city woke as it always did, fast, crowded, indifferent. No headlines announced his arrival. No cameras waited. Keanu Reeves was moved through underground corridors and sealed vehicles, hidden from a world that still believed he was preparing for his next film. The courthouse did not look like a courthouse. It rose without signs or symbols, a reinforced structure of concrete and glass tucked between government buildings. Inside, security was absolute. Biometric gates, facial scans, armed officers who spoke only in nods and hand signals. Every step was documented, then immediately classified. The courtroom itself was small and windowless. No public seating, no press, no jury, just a raised bench, a national emblem polished to perfection, and a silence heavy with intention. Keanu stood alone at the center. Across from him sat three officials, judges in dark robes whose faces betrayed nothing. To their side, a prosecutor opened a digital file already thick with redactions. A defense chair existed, but no lawyer occupied it. Representation, he had been informed, was unnecessary. The proceedings began without ceremony. The charges were read aloud in neutral tones. Involvement in unauthorized intelligence operations, breach of international security protocols, and indirect responsibility for destabilizing protected economic channels. Each accusation sounded abstract, sanitized, carefully stripped of human context. Keanu listened. He recognized the words for what they were, not truth, but structure. A narrative built to carry a verdict safely to its destination. When asked to respond, he spoke only once. "This trial isn't about justice," he said calmly. "It's about erasing a mistake you don't want remembered." The room did not react. Evidence was presented, edited footage, altered timestamps, testimony from witnesses whose identities remained sealed. Each piece fit perfectly, too perfectly, like a puzzle assembled long before he entered the room. The judges conferred in silence. There was no deliberation, only confirmation. The verdict arrived swiftly. "Guilty." The word echoed softly, absorbed by the walls designed to keep secrets from escaping. The sentence followed immediately, as if it had been waiting its turn. 5 years imprisonment under maximum security jurisdiction. Keanu felt the weight of it then, not as fear, but as gravity. 5 years removed from the world. 5 years of silence. 5 years for a truth no one was allowed to hear as officers stepped forward. Rain intensified outside, hammering against the building like a protest that would never be acknowledged. Keanu allowed himself one final look at the bench, at the system that had chosen stability over truth. The gavel struck once, case sealed by the time the doors closed behind him. The trial was already classified, its records locked away. Officially, it had never taken place. The words followed him long after the courtroom doors closed. 5 years. They echoed through underground corridors, through steel elevators descending into silence, through every measured step that carried Keanu Reeves away from the last place where his fate could have been challenged. Even in theory, the prison transport vehicle was unmarked, its windows blacked out, its interior stripped to metal and restraint. As the doors sealed, the city above continued moving, unaware that a sentence meant to vanish. A man from history was already being carried out. The facility stood on the outskirts of Hong Kong, concealed behind layers of security and official deniability. It did not appear on maps. Supplies arrived without labels. Staff rotated without names. This was not a place for rehabilitation. It was a place for containment. Keanu was processed in silence. Clothing exchanged for a neutral uniform. Personal identity reduced to a number. Fingerprints scanned, iris captured, DNA cataloged and stored somewhere he would never see. Each step was methodical, impersonal, designed to break continuity between who he had been and who the system now required him to be. A senior officer read the final confirmation of sentence from a secure tablet. His voice was steady, rehearsed. Inmate will serve 5 consecutive years. No media access. No external contact. No appeals. Keanu signed the digital acknowledgement without hesitation. Resistance at this stage would be ceremonial at best. The cell door opened with a hydraulic hiss. Inside, the space was narrow and clean. A steel bed bolted to the wall. A sink that delivered cold water only. A single narrow window positioned too high to see the sky. Light entered on a controlled schedule, switching on and off without regard for sleep or sanity. This would be his world. As the door closed, locking him inside with a final metallic click, Keanu stood still. He did not sit. He did not pace. He simply breathed, grounding himself in the present moment. 5 years was not just time, it was erosion. Relationships would fade. Stories would be rewritten. The world would move on, adjusting seamlessly to his absence. That was the point. From the corridor beyond his cell, distant sounds echoed, boots on concrete, doors sealing, voices muted by steel. Other inmates existed, but contact was restricted. Isolation was part of the sentence. Yet even here, Keanu felt it, a quiet awareness that he was not alone in the way the system believed. His name still meant something in places untouched by official records, and secrets once planted had a way of growing in silence. He sat on the edge of the bed and closed his eyes. 5 years could destroy a man, or it could prepare him. As the lights dimmed for the first time, one thought settled firmly in his mind. They had sentenced his body, not the truth. Time inside the prison moved differently. Days blurred into weeks, weeks into months, marked only by the mechanical rhythm of lights, switching on and off, and the distant echo of steel doors opening and closing. There were no calendars, no announcements. Time was something each inmate carried alone. Keanu Reeves learned the prison's language quickly, not spoken, but observed. A nod in the corridor, a pause before entering common space, the way guards avoided certain cell numbers without explanation. This was a place ruled by invisible hierarchies, where reputations traveled faster than names. When Keanu was finally permitted limited movement outside his cell, he felt the shift immediately. Eyes followed him, not with hostility, but recognition. Whispers passed between inmates who had once lived lives the world denied existed. Former intelligence handlers, cyber operatives, men who had crossed lines drawn in disappearing ink. They knew him, not as a movie star, but as something else. One afternoon in the exercise yard, a gray-haired inmate approached him casually, as if discussing the weather. His voice was low, almost respectful. "Didn't think they'd ever bring you in," the man said. Keanu didn't respond. He didn't need to. Words spread quietly, not through intimidation, but through understanding. Keanu had chosen silence when speaking would have saved himself. In this prison, that choice mattered. At night, shadows stretched across cell walls, cast by passing guards and distant movement. Keanu listened to footsteps, to breathing, to the subtle hum of surveillance systems. He memorized patterns. Cameras had blind spots. Systems always did. Occasionally, fragments of news slipped through, coded remarks from guards, half-heard radio chatter. The outside world continued. Films released. Headlines changed. His name appeared less and less. That, too, was expected. But something else was happening. Each year of his sentence, a rumor surfaced beyond the prison. Documents leaking, unnamed sources speaking, financial irregularities tied to long-buried operations. Nothing direct. Nothing traceable. Just enough to unsettle powerful institutions. Inside, inmates began to watch the guards instead of the other way around. Keanu remained patient. He spoke rarely. When he did, his words were deliberate. He was not building alliances. He was waiting. On the 3rd-year anniversary of his sentence, a guard he had never seen before paused outside his cell. Their eyes met for just a moment. "Tick," the guard whispered. Then he walked on. Keanu sat back on his bed, the faintest hint of a smile crossing his face. The countdown was real. The truth was moving, piece by piece, exactly as planned. This prison, built to bury secrets, had become something else entirely. a holding place, and the shadows were beginning to shift. Time passed quietly, yet every day inside the Hong Kong prison brought a subtle shift that the authorities never noticed. Keanu Reeves counted the hours not by clocks, but by patterns, the guards' rotations, the delivery of meals, the moments the surveillance cameras rotated. Each repetition became part of a hidden rhythm, a countdown invisible to everyone else. Outside, his allies moved in silence. They were few, precise, and anonymous. Every year of his sentence marked a small victory, a leaked document here, a minor scandal there, pieces of hidden truths surfacing in whispers. Powerful institutions squirmed as fragments of history began to emerge, their control slightly undermined without anyone knowing the source. Inside his cell, Keanu carefully monitored the information trickling through, guard conversations, faint snippets of radio chatter, indirect references from the rare visitors who passed by. Each clue was cataloged, forming a mental map of the world outside, a map of influence, weakness, and opportunity. He had learned to move without moving, to act without acting. The prison walls, designed to break men, instead became a strategic grid. He could predict the routines, anticipate the blind spots, and prepare for the moment his sentence ended. Every detail mattered. Every small fragment of information was a tool. Year 4 arrived quietly. It was a milestone that few would ever mark. Keanu could feel the final stage approaching. The leaks had begun to destabilize silent networks of power, creating cracks through which truth might eventually escape. The countdown was nearing 0, but he did not underestimate them. The authorities remained vigilant, their eyes everywhere yet blind to the subtleties. They saw only what was presented. They could not see the mind quietly dismantling their illusions, waiting for the right moment. At night, as faint light filtered through the narrow prison window, Keanu sat cross-legged on the bed, tracing mental timelines, connecting names, events, and secrets. The world outside had forgotten him, or at least believed it had. But Keanu knew that when the 5th year concluded, the balance would tip. Not with force, but with revelation. The hidden countdown had a rhythm, all its own. Tick, tick, tick. Each beat closer to freedom. Each beat closer to a world finally seeing the truth that had been buried for far too long. And somewhere deep inside, Keanu felt the subtle thrill of inevitability. The clock might be invisible to them, but he had been counting from the very first day. The world would not know it yet, but change was already in motion. The 5th year began with a quiet intensity. Keanu Reeves could feel it in every step he took along the narrow corridor of his cell block, in the subtle rhythm of the guards' footsteps, and in the faint hum of distant machinery. The prison itself seemed to recognize the approaching conclusion, its shadows stretching differently, its silence charged with anticipation. Outside, the world remained oblivious. Headlines no longer whispered his name. Films, scandals, and fleeting news had replaced him in public consciousness. But the hidden currents of power were shifting, subtle leaks now forming torrents that destabilized the carefully constructed facades of those who had orchestrated his arrest. Inside, Keanu moved with purpose. He had spent 5 years in preparation, observing, listening, predicting. Every fragment of information collected, every hidden pattern memorized, every silence recorded mentally had led to this moment. The countdown was complete. As the prison gates prepared to open for the last time, he walked toward them with measured calm. This was more than a release from confinement. It was the first step toward rewriting a narrative that powerful institutions had tried to bury. Allies outside had readied the stage. The pieces were in place. The truth was poised to emerge. When he finally stepped into the open air of Hong Kong, the city greeted him with the same indifferent bustle that had masked his arrival 5 years earlier. Neon lights reflected off wet streets, taxis honked, and the rain softened the edges of skyscrapers. The world had not waited for him, but that was precisely the advantage. Keanu had a choice: walk away silently, reclaiming freedom but leaving the hidden truths behind, or ignite a reckoning, exposing secrets that would shake governments, corporations, and intelligence agencies alike. He paused under a street lamp, feeling the wet glow on his face, considering the cost. Then, with a measured breath, he stepped forward, not into safety, but into purpose. The 5 years of shadow, observation, and patience had prepared him for this. Every calculated step, every silent hour, every hidden connection converged into action. The moment had arrived. The world did not yet know he was coming, but when he moved, it would feel like fire, sudden, unstoppable, and undeniable. Keanu Reeves was no longer merely a man. He was a force poised to challenge the lies that had imprisoned him and to reclaim not just his life but the truth itself. As the neon-lit streets of Hong Kong stretched out before him, the city's heartbeat aligned with his own. Freedom was more than a door. It was the beginning of a storm. And this time, there would be no going back.